Gary Nager of the New Tampa and Wesley Chapel Neighborhood News, and this is the first ever, as far as I know, Zoom community meeting for New Tampa and Wesley Chapel regarding racism. The reason that I wanted to do this is because, like so many Americans of all colors, we watched a man be murdered by a police officer. And no matter how I've heard people say, oh, he had this record, he had these problems, they had this run-in with him before. All I know is that for 8 minutes and 40 some odd seconds, somebody knelt on somebody's neck. And I told a story in the paper about having also passed a counterfeit bill, for me, totally by accident. I don't know if Mr. Floyd's was totally by accident or not, but I know for us, it was definitely by accident because it was a wedding present that somebody gave me, a $100, they gave Jana and I, my wife, a $100 bill. And we brought it to a bar that we go to regularly, and they came back and said, we're sorry, this bill's counterfeit. And nobody called the police. Police didn't come and interrogate me. I wasn't pushed to the ground. I wasn't knelt on. And I just felt like, here, he only passed a counterfeit 20. And no matter what his situation was before, no matter what, once he had given in to the police where he was just being held down, all it really was murder. And I understand the outrage and I understand how people feel about it, but everyone feels, I think, a little bit differently about it. And so what I wanted to do was get people from the community together and just let's talk about our experience with racism and whether or not there's anything that any of us as a community can do to help in our own community, start small, and then hopefully maybe it can grow into something larger. And the first person that I thought of to be part of this along with me was State Representative Fentress Driscoll. And Fentress is here. State Representative Fentress Driscoll, I was really excited to have join me on this because Fentress is an African-American woman. She is a graduate of Harvard University. She's a graduate of Georgetown Law. She's been a working lawyer in Tampa for a number of years with one of the largest firms in Tampa. And she's now a state representative, and having won her race against someone who was much better known in politics, had been around for quite some time, and she beat him rather handily because I think people got the message, not so much about the other person that she was running against, but about Fentress, where her heart is and was when she was running and what she's been able to accomplish since she's been in the state government. And as soon as I emailed her, I said, would you be interested in being involved in this? And she said, absolutely. I go, okay, well, I'm going to say that I'm going to have you co-host this with me. And she said, okay. So I really wanted to start with her. And Fentress, I know your experience is significantly different than mine in this world. And I just thought if anyone has faced, racism that I know and at a high level, it's probably been you. And whatever that you see yourself being able to do about it, I don't know, because I don't know what I see me being able to do about it, but I wanted you to be able to have your say here tonight. And I appreciate you being here so much. Thank you. Fentress Driscoll.
Hi, Gary. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you to everyone who took time to join. And to me, it's a testament of the wonderful strength in our community and willingness of people to come together and have some honest conversations about race. And I'll tell you, conversations about race are not easy. We're trained not to engage in conversation that could be controversial, right? No politics, no religion, definitely not race. So I applaud you for being here and for willing to be vulnerable and to engage in this conversation. And I'll tell you that the big reason why I wanted to participate, like so many of you, is that in the wake of George Floyd's murder, it has awakened American consciousness in a way that I don't think we've seen since the civil rights movement. And to be very clear, it's not that structural racism is anything new or that racism is anything new, but America's conscience has been confronted with it in such a way that it's impossible to ignore right now. So just a little bit about my background, and I think, as I understand it, and Gary will, correct me if I got the framework wrong, but tonight really is about having a safe space for people to be willing to open up and share their own stories with racism or structural racism. So I wanted to share a little bit with you about my own story. I grew up in Polk County, which is nearby. I always like to say I'm fairly local. Polk County is a community that I grew up in Lakeland, really technically from Bartow, which is a very small town. And Polk County certainly has strong Southern and rural influences. And as I think back on my childhood and how I conceptualized race then, or how it impacted me then, in school, it could be something. This is an example of structural racism where, you could have let's say a squad of 20 girls trying out for the cheerleading squad or for whatever squad that there may be. And then you look and you see everybody makes it except for the Black girls that tried out. And you look at that scenario and you think, what happened there? If you see that they were just as talented, if you see that they were just as promising, why do they get left off? And as a Black person, it makes you question whether or not that could have been about race, whether overt or some sort of implicit bias, or in class, raising your hand and not getting called on. It could look like things like that, or it could be more overt. I can remember a time when I was in high school and driving through a fast food drive-through, and it was on a Friday night, and I was in my parents' minivan, and I went through the drive-through and passed by a group of young white people who threw a can, like a can of soda or something at the van and yelled and called me the N-word for no reason. It can look like that. It can be in your career. With me as an attorney, going to court and having been presumed to be the court reporter. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. And hear me when I say there is nothing wrong with being a court reporter. It's an honorable profession, and the courts wouldn't work without it. We would have no record without it. But to walk into the courtroom in a suit with a briefcase and be presumed to be the court reporter after having worked so hard to be a lawyer or to be in court with a client, and have it been presumed that I was the client and that my client was the lawyer, you start to question those sorts of assumptions that people make about you. And then you zoom out to an even broader perspective, and you see what happens to someone like George Floyd, and to talk about how that strikes at your heart as a human, period. Any human watching that, their heart should be broken and they should be crying out. But as a Black person, to watch that and to have that perspective of feeling like it's just such an example, yet again, of Black people being mistreated because of the color of our skin and not the content of our character. The American criminal justice system is founded upon a principle that you are innocent until you are proven guilty. So there is nothing that gives anyone the right to be judge, jury, and executioner in a scenario like that. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my own story. I could go on, but I don't want to spend too much time, but just wanted to share.
It's interesting what you said, because it leads me into where I was going to go from here, which is I have with us John West, who's with Big 3 Media, and he came and spoke by Zoom as well at a recent Rotary Club meeting of ours, and his company and himself produced this amazing documentary film about the history, basically, of the Black experience in the city of Zephyr Hills, Florida, which is right up the road from here. I mean, Wesley Chapel addresses are actually Zephyr Hills addresses, because that's our post office. And there was a small Black community that started up probably in the 40s, I think, is where you said some grandparents and stuff were in there. And they were living basically in boxcars, and they, grew up in Zephyr Hills, and it was very comfortable for them until they desegregated schools in the, early 70s. And these people that he interviewed, wonderful, amazing stories that they told. And the one that I really thought, like when John made his presentation at our Rotary Club, the Rotary Club of Wesley Chapel, the thing, like, it immediately caught me, because this happened. He happened to appear shortly after the George Floyd situation, and the piece that we were going to show everyone, if we could get it to work, and we'll do it next time since we couldn't, or you will hopefully be able to get John to everybody to go on and view it. Was about the first ever Black police officer in the Zephyr Hills Police Department, and a previous lieutenant in the, well, I think in the Air Force, or the Navy, who wanted to be the first Black police officer in Zephyr Hills, was living in Zephyr Hills after he had served 3 years. They wouldn't let him be a police officer. They wouldn't even consider it. The police chief wouldn't accept his application. And then he was introduced because this young man was a prison guard, and he only took the prison guard job because he was 20 years old and having twin daughters. And when he was the prison guard, they said, you know what, you're in the wrong place. You should be a police officer. And he, from that point, became the first Black police officer. But on his first day at the job, he was introduced to someone that he was going to be working with, who refused to shake his hand or even make eye contact with him. And here, like, one day, this person might need this young police officer to save his life in a situation. You have no idea. So, and then he realized that part of what he was going to have to do was break down barriers. And as soon as he said the words, break down barriers, I'm thinking, there's so many barriers to racial harmony in this country. Not all of them related to politics. A lot of them just to all different reasons. But there's just, as soon as I heard those words, break down barriers, I said, he had to break down barriers in order to be accepted as a Zephyr Hills police officer. And he said basically that when they would do a call in, when they would go to a call for a domestic disturbance with a Black couple, he said somebody or both of them were going out in handcuffs. It wasn't even discussed. But when it was a white couple, they would go there and try to talk them down. And this was something that he was being taught as a police officer was the common way of doing things. And so I just felt like John hit the nail on the head. And I don't know if because he started making this film 2 years ago. So John, just go ahead and tell us a little bit about the inspiration for the film and how it ended up being. I'm sure you didn't know, originally what was going to be, what was going to come out of it. John West.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you, Gary. It's an honor to be a part of this, and an honor to hear from Representative Driscoll as well. And I when we started the project, we were recruited by the city of Zephyr Hills. My partner Andrew and I, Big Three Films, and we were recruited because I grew up locally. I worked in Dade City, or I grew up in Dade City, went to high school. And I had no idea that any of these stories had ever happened. I mean, I had zero awareness of the history of the Black community of Zephyr Hills. And I think that goes for a lot of people who grew up in Dade City, Zephyr Hills, Wesley Chapel areas. And so the purpose of the film was kind of to celebrate that community and to lift up and provide an avenue for people to be able to hear their voices and hear their stories. And I mean, all I can say is that it was eye-opening for me as to, what the kinds of things that happened, the kinds of institutional racism that had been overcome by members of this community, the kinds of things they still dealt with, the controversies that, again, I was completely ignorant of. And I grew up 10 miles down the road. So it was a learning experience for me. And I mean,
John,
sorry.
the other part of that video that so like grabbed me when I went through it the last couple of days was the families. You have the three sisters and a couple of other people who had been part of a peaceful protest
Mhm.
in the 1960s because the high school wasn't called Zephyr Hills High back then, right? It was like Mickens or something, or
No,
was it still Zephyr
it
Hills High?
it was it was Zephyr Hills High, but the school song was Dixie, I
Yeah,
believe, is
the
what
school
you're
song
referring
was
to. Yeah.
Dixie. And so a gentleman that was interviewed for this piece said, you know, we really take offense to, you know, having it brought up all the time to have Dixie as our school song, because we can't be part of that. We feel, you know, it's offensive to most, if not all, Black people because of the history of that song. And they said that if you continue to play it, we're going to get up and we're going to walk out at some point. And they said, well, if you walk out, you'll be expelled. And so they played Dixie at this pep rally, and they all wrote down on notes on pieces of paper what they were offended by the song. And the guy gave the signal because they started playing it, and they all stood up, handed the pieces of paper to the principal of the school, and they all walked out. And the next day, rather than getting a call that they were being expelled, they got a call saying, you know, why don't you come in and let's talk about this? And I love the line where he goes, and I never had to hear Dixie again. It was so beautiful. It just really, John, it can move you to tears. And Fentress, there was one of the three sisters mentioned that when she was in school in Zephyr Hills, that I think elementary school, that they put people in categories like F3-1, 3-2, 3-3, or whatever it is in each grade. And the lower the number, the smarter you were. And so when she goes to school, she's a 3-1 in third grade, and she's sitting in the class. All the name tags were on the desk. So she's sitting at her assigned seat, and the teacher walks in and goes, oh, no, this can't be right. And immediately took her out of the classroom and sent her to 3-5 or 3-6 or whatever it was. And, you know, like obviously she said she was, you know, really smart, and she did a lot of reading, and she was good with math, and, you know, she should have been with her peers in terms of the way that they had the grading system. But instead, because she was Black, it was just assumed that she didn't belong in that class. And John, so many other examples in that film, but I hope everyone will get to see it. If you want, I will send the link to everybody who's signed up for this so that they can view it on their own, and then we could talk about it when we have a second meeting. But John,
I
I am
appreciate
sorry
that.
that we weren't able to get it to work tonight, but I really appreciate it. And I called him immediately during the Rotary meeting, and I said, I need to show this film when I have this meeting. And he said, absolutely. And he was good enough to be here as well. So I really appreciate it. But I don't appreciate him or Representative Driscoll more than everybody else who's also here tonight. And I really want everybody to have their say. And what I'd like you to do is that when I recognize you, I'll unmute your mic, or I may have to just ask you to unmute yourself. And if you click on yourself, you'll be able to see at the bottom of your screen that says mute or unmute on your microphone. And hopefully we'll be able to hear you. And just basically, you know, give your name, where you live. And you don't have to be, I'm not asking for your address. I'm saying, you know, I live in Seven Oaks, or I live in New Tampa, or I live in Lutz. I don't care where you live. You can recognize that. And if you want to say what you do for a living, that's fine. But what I'd like to know is why you wanted to be here and what your experience in racism, you know, with racism has been. And then hopefully Representative Driscoll will have some commentary, and we can have some discussion about what everyone talks about. And since we only right now at this point have like 18 people, we should be able to get through and still be done in time for the Lightning game, because I didn't know, you see, I'm representing, I did not know that their playoff game was going to be tonight. So I only wanted this to be an hour, be an introductory thing, but we'll let this go. I want to make sure everybody has their piece. So Cornelius, you were in here first. Let me find you on here.
I just unmuted myself.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right. Well,
you can mute yourself if you like, or you could leave it open. But Cornelius, go ahead. Cornelius and I met recently, and I was so excited to hear that he was interested in being here.
Yes. Again, thank you for having me. My name is Cornelius Demps. I live in Wesley Chapel. I'm the founding partner of the Demps Law Firm, PLLC, so we are a proud Wesley Chapel practice. I am also the most recently elected vice president of the George Edgecombe Bar Association in Hillsborough County, and following in the steps of Representative Francis Driscoll, who of course was a prior president of our bar association as well. And we're a bar association dedicated to the advancement and the success of African American lawyers. I wanted to be on this discussion because I just felt that if we're going to have this type of discussion, I wanted to be involved so I can give my perspective and also help contribute to our community. We love Wesley Chapel. A little bit about me: I started my career as a prosecutor in Newport Richey, on the west side, so I'm very familiar with Pasco. I've worked most of my life in Hillsborough County. I am a lifelong Floridian, a descendant of proud Jacksonville sharecroppers and Bahamian immigrants. So I love this. I love the state. I love where I live. But we do have issues, especially in our state, when it comes to issues of racism. I've definitely had my fair share of experiences throughout my entire career, to the time where I was pulled over by a police officer, because when you're a prosecutor, your tags are blocked out so no one can actually see you. And so this officer saw my tag was blocked out, pulled me over, and was asking who I was. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm a prosecutor in Newport Richey. And he didn't believe me at all, to the point of where he had to call supervisors at my office to verify who I was. And it wasn't until another one of my prosecutors knew who the officer was and texted him and said, yeah, he's one of our guys, just leave him alone. And it's disgusting, and it really is. I think when it comes to issues of racism that we face, and a lot of it I think is a spiritual issue, but it's also just a question of fear, because people don't know what's going on. We don't understand. A lot of people don't understand the issues that are unique to the Black experience. A lot of the stories that that are out, that John West was able to tell about Zephyr Hills, is amazing, but it's stories that are not taught in our schools. Kids don't know about it. Additionally, you had recently Rod Carter for WFLA News also did a story about Freetown in East Pasco, which was the historic Black community founded by Benjamin Badston, and that's right outside of Wesley Chapel. Founded by a Black man who had 80 acres worth of orange grove land, and you don't know about that stuff. But I'm glad that you all had this discussion today, because we need to come together and start facing these issues. And really answering some of the questions that need to be addressed. And we're right now in the middle of, really, as the Times call, or the Time magazine call, we're in the middle of a second American Revolution that's going on right now. You have issues of not only the death of George Floyd, but also Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and most recently the Jacob Blake, who's been paralyzed apparently now. And these are issues that need to be addressed. We do need criminal justice reform in this country. We've had issues with that for a long time, in part because during the age of segregation, the main mechanism used to enforce Jim Crow principles were law enforcement. And so you have people who feel that way, who think that way, who've been a part of that system for so long. And even though the laws have changed, we've moved on in society, some of those systemic policies that were in place have continued to survive. And that racism hasn't gone away in the system, it's just become more sophisticated. But that's fine, because there's people like us who should be able to address these issues that we have and solve these problems that we have today. And Wesley Chapel is growing. It's changing every single day. This is a beautiful community, a very diverse community. And we want to make sure that everyone here has the same economic opportunities and chances as everyone else, and we can really work together to become a better community.
Well, thank you, Cornelius. Representative Driscoll, anything to add or?
Thank you. I'll try to not interrupt, because I know we only have about 24 minutes and I want to hear from as many people as possible. But thank you for your comments, Cornelius. And it's interesting that you did mention some incidents that took place after the murder of George Floyd, which lets us know that clearly that incident wasn't even enough to change our society to where it needs to be.
Agreed.
So thank you.
Wendy and Bruce Worrell are next. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, because I have a tendency not to. So I'm going to unmute you, or ask to unmute, and you can go ahead and say your piece. It's nice. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi. So we're immigrants, actually. We're originally from Canada. We've been in the States now for over 25 years, though. And we've been in Florida for about 7 years from Baltimore. And we just want to be witness. I'm going to get emotional, sorry. And it's just stupid. I hate doing this, but I always do. And just be supportive and do whatever we can to support the community the way we should.
Why are you, Bruce, have any reason why she's so emotional about this particular thing? Is something that affected you guys?
I can tell you, we moved from Canada 30 odd years ago, and it was jaw dropping and eye opening to the segregation that we encountered when we moved into Baltimore. But again, we have to fall back on the white privilege, and we really didn't, we didn't experience any of it other than what we saw. We lived in the inner city, and we go to stores, and you could really see how different groups were treated, and that really
blatant racism that we've never seen before, and it was quite shocking moving here.
And so like Wendy said, it's a long time coming, and a lot of emotions have built up, and it's unfortunate a lot of people have been hurt, and we need a lot more of these forums to start ramping up. And again, being white, unfortunately, we're stuck right now in a listen only mode because we want to learn. We don't know what other groups have gone through, and we just need to learn. And then from, once we get that information, then I think we're in a better position to help the group move forward.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. That's really sweet. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to mute them. And the next person on my list is Brittany Curtis. So I'm going to ask you to unmute. Click on that.
Hi.
Brittany, you there? Hello?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, now I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I think I can turn my video on if you guys are able to see me.
Okay. Oh, nice. Nice to see you. Who's with you?
So I'm here with my husband.
Hi, thanks for having this program. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you guys being here. So talk to me. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so I would just echo,
First of all, Brittany, where are you guys from, and what do you do? Give us a little bit of background.
So we're both Tampanians. I know that's rare. Both born and raised in Tampa and lived in different parts of Tampa throughout our lives. We're actually in Live Oak, and we've been in the new Tampa area living out here for about 3 years. So I would say, I just want to start by saying, thank you, echoing the appreciation for setting this type of meeting up. It's not every day the opportunity presents itself to have a community discussion. And I will be the first one to admit I don't show up to HOA meetings. It's not really my thing. But, I think to meet this moment, it was just important for us to be present. And I think just the conversation and being present, and thank you for everyone else on the call too, to be part of the conversation. And like someone else mentioned, right, I think the education is just so important, because just 3 months ago or however long it's been, like most people, I've lost my sense of timing since the pandemic hit. To say things like racism out loud was taboo, right? And that was unfortunate. So that's just half the battle, is getting to that point. From an experience perspective, it's kind of like, where do you begin?
Exactly.
It goes from anything, and there was actually a reference to this too regarding the school, right? Like there was a school in one of the neighborhoods that my husband grew up in that was called Robert Lee Elementary, right? Could you imagine?
Robert E. Lee Elementary.
Tampa?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I remember Lee Elementary, yeah.
Well, yeah, it ended up catching on fire.
Recently.
Yeah, recently, but it ended up changing the name.
Right.
So, yeah, it was Robert E. Lee Elementary, and everyone just felt that as if it was normal. No one really recognized what was going on, and that's part of the problem also, is that we're so conditioned by these behaviors that become normal to all of us, and don't even see that all the racism that we're affected by and the stress that lingers on for us for so long.
Right. And I think that, when it comes to this forum, right, in this setting, one of the things that, because the question is always like, okay, we can talk about it, and that's a really good starting point, right? But where do you go from here? And it is about self-reflection, understanding kind of your presence in the world. One of the things that I think is important to understand when we're talking about the African American experience is like that everyday toll that it takes psychologically on you. And I'll give you a very specific example. In our last community, which was actually in Riverview, my husband had a situation where he was taking the dog for a walk. He had his 4-year-old nephew at the time.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after the George Zimmerman incident, and the dog used the bathroom because that's what dogs do, which she is present, so she can say hi, say hello. This is our family. And there was a man who drove by, saw the dog using the bathroom, and before he could even bend over to pick up the poop, he stopped and said, "Oh, are you going to pick that up? And I pay HOAs here," and made the assumption that we were renters, that we did not pay the same HOAs that he paid. And it was pretty evident that it was extremely, racist in terms of his intentions. I don't mean to be stereotypical here, right? But his truck said something about redneck on it, had a Confederate flag. The context was there, right? There was just a very hostile environment. So, those are the subtleties, right? Where it's like my HOAs don't matter as
and
much
the
as
sad
your
part
HOAs.
about that is, if I would have reacted any way different, I would probably have been the person that would have been killed or sent to prison, or
Exactly.
I would have been the person that caused all the problems. So I'm just thankful that I reacted the way I did, but it's sad that I have to seduce myself at all times to make other people comfortable. So
And
that's a burden and a stress that we live with just daily, knowing that I have to always calm myself down.
and just to connect it back to the day-to-day experience, I literally don't, I shouldn't say allow, but I don't like him to go for a jog at night by himself in any neighborhood like that. I have a stress to think that he would go for a jog by himself and potentially, end up being Ahmaud Arbery or Trayvon Martin. Like, it's a very real stress. And that's the thing that gets carried around and kind of buried. So it is therapeutic, I think, to have these outlets. And quite frankly, the George Floyd outcry was, I think, so many years built up of everyone feeling like, okay, it has to come out eventually, because that's just a healthy part of expressing your emotions and going through that daily grief and
Ruthie,
stress.
what's your husband's first name again? Because he's not on the.
My name is Ronell.
How you spell that?
Ronnell.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. And next on my list, I have David Larson. David, I'm going to ask to unmute you. I'm going to mute you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate you a lot. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My interest in being in this started a couple of days after George Floyd's death, when I got a text message from my oldest son asking me what I'm doing about what's going on in the country, what's happened with George Floyd. What am I doing both from my business perspective? What am I doing personally? My son is half Hispanic. My wife is Mexican. And what I didn't realize growing up, and he didn't tell me until just that text message, was that that he was discriminated against as a child. And the reason why he told me, or he didn't tell me that, and he didn't even tell his mom, is because he didn't think that we would believe him. And when he recounted all of the things that happened to him, I was heartbroken as a father to know that those things happened. I had totally oblivious to it. So I've really dedicated myself since then in kind of an obsessive way to really understand what all the different things, all the different terms that you're hearing today, like privilege and anti-racism, what all those things mean. I've come down to, I think, a couple things, at least at this point in my journey. And number one, I think all progress has to start with telling the truth. And I think that, I commend everyone that's on here that has experienced racism, because I really haven't. So I realize now how hard it is that for a lot of people, what we're all going through with COVID and is probably a stress level that many people of color probably experience on a daily basis, and just through, trying to make it through the world. So the other thing that I think feel pretty strongly about is that we do have problems in Tampa. We have problems in Tampa with our own police department. There's protesters that have been hit by cars, and the police have arrested the protesters instead of arresting the people that have struck the protesters by cars. And we have to call these things out, especially white people have to call them out, because we're the ones with the power, and we're the ones that are going to get the attention for calling them out. And so I've been trying to do that in my life, in my personal life, trying to do that. And then also just to let my team members, the people that work for me, know that I see them, and I support Black Lives Matter, and that trying to get them to register to vote, all different things that could help to make changes. But there's so many different levels to this, and so many different things that we have to work on, from voting, from looking at our police budgets and how they're allocated, looking at prosecutors, and are they, how are they dealing with people of color versus white people? So many different layers. It's kind of overwhelming, and I'm just into this for a couple of months, so I can't imagine what it'd be like to have to have lived with this your entire life. It's an overwhelming problem.
Dave talks about his team, and he has owned or been part of the ownership group of many of the hotels in New Tampa and Wesley Chapel, and still owns, which one, Dave, now?
The Holiday Inn Express.
The Holiday Express in New Tampa. And he has offered, if and when we have not as much concern about the pandemic, there's a vaccine or something, for us to actually meet in person at his hotel. So I hope that happens, and I really appreciate you being here tonight, Dave. Thank you so much.
Thanks for putting it on.
All right, take care. Okay, Don, there you go. You're unmuted.
Hello, I'm Donna Harwood. Sorry, I'm on my phone, and I would do the picture, but I'm afraid I'll lose you. I'm Donna Harwood. I live right inside Hillsborough County. I'm on County Line Road near Bruce B. Downs. So I'm very active in the community as far as, shopping, community activities. I read the newspaper, your newspaper, all the time. I think it's great.
Thank you.
And I saw the article, and I'll be totally honest. When I saw Fentress's name, I know Fentress. I'm very happy to say that I'm pleased to have been able to spend time with Fentress over the last 2 years, helping out with her campaign some, and being active in local politics. It took me a while, but I decided to get involved in that. So I'm very active in the community, and I want to be, I want my community to continue to thrive, and people to be able to experience the best experience they can. I grew up in a very small town in southeastern Pennsylvania. We had no Black people in my town, I will tell you that. And just a brief story, I remember growing up, and we had a community pool, and somebody telling us that they were concerned because they were going to have a swim meet there with people from other areas, and that if Black people got in the pool, something would happen. I mean, I just was shocked at that. I never did understand that. Just a brief story as to how I grew up. I wasn't taught, my family didn't feel things like that, but those are the things that I experienced. I moved to Atlanta and lived there for many years. I moved here in 2006, and I just want to be engaged and do whatever I can to spread the message and help out my fellow neighbors.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. All right, and so I'm going to mute you, and then I'm going to unmute Kyle and Sarah. You're Sarah Hill, is that correct? All right, I've asked to unmute you. There you go. And now I'm going to bring you up full screen. So, Kyle and Sarah, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. We actually just moved to Wesley Chapel about a year ago. We celebrated this past weekend of a year of moving into our home.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I grew up in a small town in Florida, Port Charlotte, Florida, so not too far from here. My husband Kyle grew up in Chicago. I think what has brought me here is I primarily work in education, and I currently work for a nonprofit that is focused on making education equitable for children regardless of what zip code they live in. And I think when I think about setting down roots in Wesley Chapel or starting a family in Wesley Chapel, I want to ensure that our schools are equitable and that if I do send my kids to a public school, I don't have to worry that they're going to experience discrimination because of the color of their skin. And we're not really involved with anything in the community, so we joined tonight to just hear what other people are doing and other opportunities for us to get involved and just learn how we can be more involved in the community. I'll pass it to my husband.
Yeah, like Sarah said, we just kind of moved here a year ago. I actually lived in the Tampa Bay area a while ago, like from 2009 to 2011. So my second time, but Sarah's first time living here. And it's just like Sarah said, wanted to try to be a part of the community and just happy to have this forum here. Even in the short time that we lived here, I've seen things that I feel like have been kind of concerning to me. And Sarah can attest to this, even in our own neighborhood. Like she said, we live in Wesley Chapel, and when the George Floyd incident originally started, and obviously there was a lot of protests, and along with some of that, unfortunately, comes like looting and vandalism and things like that. Obviously, looters aren't the same as protesters, and it's a totally different thing, but some people associate the two, and just saw a really negative reaction to that in our neighborhood, to the point where people felt like they needed to patrol the neighborhood with golf carts and guns and things like that. And that was really kind of concerning to us and unfortunate to us. And just know there has to be a better way to kind of deal with a lot of the issues that we see here with race and things of that nature. And just hoping, I think that Wendy and Bruce kind of have the right idea, just hoping that everyone will educate themselves. There's a lot of good resources out there. You mentioned John's video, or things like the movie on
One of
that.
the people who responded to my call for help, and I don't know for sure if they're here or not, but I don't think so, because I thought I would recognize the name. They said that they are interested in, because they like publish a lot of African American oriented both literature and nonfiction, and they promote and try to bring these books to, the schools. And my wife used to work for the Pasco Education Foundation, so we know a lot of the people in the school district. And if that was something that we could start, I know we didn't read any books when I was in school in Long Island, New York, about the African American experience, but there were some books that we read certainly that showed you some of it, but it wasn't necessarily written from that perspective. And I think that that would help those of us who obviously aren't people of color to be able to understand a little bit more of being Black in America. I just think it's a unique, definitely unique. So. And you, with your education background, Sarah, I might have to call on you to help me out with that at some point.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to mute you. And next on the list, I have Naomi, and I don't want to mispronounce your last name, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
All right. Last name is Lang Yunash. I am retired, but I did work as a speech language pathologist in the Pasco elementary schools. I live in New Tampa, and I'm learning a lot about racial injustice in this country, and I would like to do something positive in terms of changing that situation, but I realize that I can't lead that, so I'm here to learn and follow.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate that very much, Naomi. And we're going to try to keep doing this. To hopefully we'll be able to go from just talking into some sort of action. But even if not, I just think that, as you said, the learning for us is important as well in this situation, for all of us. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
All right. So next I have Vernika. And so I'm going to ask you to unmute and send Naomi back. All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Vernika.
My name is Vernika Rhodes, and I just recently moved to Wesley Chapel from Temple Terrace in the middle of the COVID epidemic. So I moved here the end of March, and I reside in the Meadow Point area. And I basically live in an all East Indian community. And
I know that community.
yes, it's very nice, but I was kind of concerned that it's 99% Indian. So I don't get much diversity there. My neighbors are very nice. I come from Temple Terrace. I've been in the Temple Terrace area ever since I left University of Florida. I moved here from college, raised my family in Temple Terrace.
Nice.
So everything that I have been exposed to has been in Temple Terrace. I remember when my husband and I first moved to Temple Terrace. What's the little company that they come and welcome you with the little gift basket?
Yeah, it used to be called the Welcome Wagon.
The Welcome Wagon. They came to my house and they knocked on the door. And when I opened the door, they said, "Would you please get the lady of the house?"
Oh, gosh.
So they automatically assumed that I was the maid or the hired help. So I am very used to racism in Hillsborough County. When police would pull me over in Temple Terrace, when they would see me driving in certain neighborhoods. And when I told them where I lived, they would say, "Well, how long have you been there?" And I said, "Oh, about 17 years. Then they would just let me go. So there was no infraction, but they were just pulling me over for the color of my skin.
Understand.
I got on this call tonight because I did see your article in the magazine, and I wanted to reach out because I've been very involved with justice issues in Hillsborough County, and I wanted to get involved here in Pasco.
That's
and
awesome.
Also because Ms. Driscoll was presenting tonight, and I had the pleasure of having her be a presenter for a program that I had at the state capitol this past January with another organization. So it's very good to see her tonight. So anything that I can do in the Pasco County community, since I'm new here, I'm excited to be a part, to make a difference, and to just find out more about the history here, because it was really intriguing to hear about the police cop in Zephyr Hills who could not get a job.
Right. A former
I have not
three-year
had an
lieutenant
opportunity to visit Dade City or the Zephyr Hills area yet, but I look forward to visiting the other areas outside of Wesley Chapel and just being helpful if I can.
Thank you so much, Vernika. That's awesome.
Thank
he
you.
was a military veteran, and he still couldn't get a job as a cop in Zephyr Hills. So next I have on the list, Nikki Lewis, who is actually a friend of ours. And I'm so glad that Nikki was here tonight, was able to come and join us tonight, because she has a story that touched me and Jana, me and my wife. And I really appreciate her, because we met her beautiful family. We went to a Rays game with her, and with our Rotary, well, actually with Pasco Education Foundation, and we got to take care of her, like sit with her kids, and they were just so sweet and loving and adorable, and I just couldn't imagine anybody mistreating these kids. So Nikki, I'm so glad that you could be here. Thanks. Feel free to tell your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having this. This is really important. My name is Nikki Lewis, and I live in Wesley Chapel, the Avalon Park community. I'm originally from Connecticut, so coming to Florida was a little different. But I think it's so important because so many of our stories are similar. And just listening to everyone, I'm like, yep, that happened to me. And right after everything happened with the looters and the protesters, I went through the same thing in my community when they wanted to get on their golf carts. And I was like, excuse me, that's not what we're doing here. It's not okay. That makes me fearful for my husband going out and going on his bike rides and his runs. And I run every night. So I was like, do I need to let you guys know? Like, these are real concerns and fears that we have. And it was just taken so lightly. And just even the story about a group of Black cheerleaders who don't make the squad, that was me. I'm a cheerleading coach here in Pasco County. And I also work for Take Stock in Children. So I'm in all of the Pasco County high schools. But that was my story. And so it's just so crazy how similar it is everywhere. And I think it's so important that we are able to share these so people can see this is very common. It is so common. And so to kind of get to the story that Gary was kind of talking about, I have two children. They're 5, well, she just turned 6, so 6 and 7. And we live in the Wesley Chapel area. So for them, when they go to school, they are usually the only Black children in a class. And my daughter especially had a really hard time with this, and I'm not sure why. I tried to find out like what was going on in class, like what kind of awoke her to this realization that not that she was the only Black child in the class, but to feel so afraid of that. She would come home and be very upset and just, Mom, I'm afraid of white people. And like most of my friends are white. So it was very strange to me. Her best friend lives right next door and she's white. And like her aunt and her uncle are white. So it was very strange for her to have this fear, and I didn't understand where it came from. And she didn't give anything to me to say like something happened at school or anybody was, upset with her or anything, but she was upset about this for a couple of years. And this started when she was like 3 years old in VPK preschool. So it was very concerning because that is a young age to be so afraid. And she would color pictures, and I'd say, Addie, do you want to use a brown crayon? Like, do you want your picture to look like you? And she said, well, Mommy, it's not normal. And that was kind of like, that was one of the things, like as a parent, you're like, how do I make my child know it's very normal for you to have brown skin? It's okay. It's just not around us all the time. But for her to know how important that she is and how beautiful she is, just the way she is, and that nothing has to change. So when Kyle and Sarah were talking about, potentially raising a family here and wanting this community to represent, what it would look like for your children, that's exactly what I'm going through right now. Because, when Addie was in VPK, she was the only little Black girl in her class. And she was very fortunate because one of her teachers was also Black. So I think that was one of the things that really helped her get through that year, because she had this woman who she just really leaned on and loved fiercely. But, that's very few and far in between. And so that's one of the things that, I really hope that we can start to reconcile in our schools. Like I said, I go to Pasco County schools all the time, and I can't even remember in my lifetime, besides college, having a Black teacher. And I mean, I'm 35 years old, so it's not, it's kind of crazy, So for my children, I don't want them to have to deal with the same things that I did. It's so long ago, but we're still fighting the same battles.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of, I wanted to get on here to just
awesome.
Figure it all out.
When I heard that, when Jana told me that story, I kept picturing your little girl, like, and that look on her face, how happy she was at the game. And your son, like, he was trying to make Jana, like, pick him up and hold him the whole time. Like, who treats children other than like they do other children? So for her to feel that way, I was like, oh, Nikki's got to get on here and talk to us tonight also. Thank you, Nikki.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional people on the list. Lightning game may have already been started, but I'm going to make sure everyone gets to speak tonight. I really want everyone to have their say, and we'll see where we go from here. So the next one that I have on the list is Joel. And let me see where Joel is on here. One sec. There
I've
you
unmuted myself.
are, Joel. Okay.
And I'll try to move out of the way because I am somewhat distracted by watching the boys at the pool, but I wanted to be a part of this conversation.
Okay. Well, you could do it quickly, or if you have to stop. And
Yeah,
come
no,
back to
it
that's
yeah,
fine, too.
it'll be quick. No, I just I read the article in the news. I've been a part of I've been in Tampa since I was 6. Part of the Hillsborough, grew up in the Hillsborough County school system. Also, the interesting thing is being raised by a Caribbean parent, so my family's background is Bahamian. It was interesting that while I did recognize growing up, some, I would say racist events is more covert than overt. I was always taught to look at it from a different perspective. So, a lot of times being the only one in the room was always looked at as, okay, this is a great opportunity versus really understanding what was going on. I think it really hits me now more so as I do work in diversity and inclusion at PwC, and I've been in some of our, charter schools within Hillsborough County to teach on unconscious bias. And then also being a
what's
father.
PwC?
PricewaterhouseCoopers. It's
Oh, okay. Sorry, my
professional
bad.
services firm. Yeah, no problem.
I heard of it before.
Yeah. I think what really hit after the George Floyd murder was really, having 4 Black boys that I'm raising, and just being able to have conversations with them about what's really going on. It's interesting to be out here in Wesley Chapel, only Black family on our street, and our kids play with all the neighborhood kids, and we've been out here for about 7, 8 years. But it really dawned on me, I think last year, that when it comes to birthday parties or, get-togethers where they can go in, a neighbor's pool, my kids are never invited. And so they're starting to, and it's not bothering them because I always teach them how to try to look at things from a different perspective. But these are things that are real issues that, I need to balance my approach on how I educate them, as well as make them aware of what's, the reality of what's happening. So I just really wanted to be a part of this conversation, as I do this work professionally, but I wanted to be able to also provide this, be a part of something greater within our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Joel. It's funny that you say that because my son, when my younger son was 7 or 8 years old, he was on a soccer team, and his best friend on that soccer team was a young Black boy, and his parents I loved. His mom was a PTA president. His dad was from Long Island like me, and he was much more of a self-made man than I was. And I remember my son was invited to a birthday party after their soccer game, so he brought his friend along with him. And when we walked in, I said, "Oh, is it okay if his friend, joins also?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, go play." So they go off to play. And she said, "Well, my daughter knows better than to ever bring me home one of those."
Wow.
And I just looked at her and I said, "You know what? I got to go. I'm taking my kid and I'm going to get out of here because I love that family so much." And to think that my son, had to, like his friend wasn't invited to the party. He probably knew the little girl. I don't know for sure that he did or not, but they all went to the same school. And, that just broke my heart to just not want to be there anymore. And my son loved that little girl, but and she said, and then when she said that, there were other parents and they were saying, "Oh yeah, my daughter too." And I'm like, I'm in the wrong party. I'm in the wrong place. So I appreciate you being here tonight, Joel. I really do.
No, thank you for the invite.
Thank you. All right. So next on my list is April. And by the way, Representative Driscoll, you can chime in at any time. You know that, I hope. All right. Next on my list is April. But go ahead, Prentice.
So hopefully you can see me and hear me.
Oh, gotcha.
Hey everyone. I'm at the beach. As I look at my camera, I promise I have on a swimsuit. I have been in New Tampa now 4 weeks. I know absolutely nothing about the area. I came here from Maryland, and I am very appreciative of you creating the space. I reached out to you. I'm just reading the newspaper, like, where do I live now? My motivation for moving here was the weather and the beach. I recently left corporate America to run my consultancy full time, and I focus on mental well-being. And when you ask the question, what do we think we can do? A super mini story. The reason I'm at the beach now, I wanted the sunset, I wanted the energy, the peace, because this morning I was in a 2-hour psychological evaluation because I'm in the process of getting my disability for PTSD. I served 6 years in the Army. I did 2 deployments. I'm a Gold Star wife because my husband was killed in Iraq. So if my Black skin and my Black culture and my Black everything is good enough to fight for this country, I can't understand for the life of me why my Blackness isn't good enough to walk down the street, why my Blackness isn't good enough to go to the store or experience the same level of equality as everyone else. So after sitting here and revisiting trauma that I experienced, and then to get on this call and say, it's amazing how my people get used for the good of the nation when it comes to sports, entertainment, military. But when it comes to, certain elected seats that we can sit in and, positions that we can hold in the community and how we are so not represented and misrepresented on TV, it really makes me sick to my stomach. So what I feel we can do and what I've just been asking God to help me understand is what is going on inside the minds of those that are racist. Because you can't just hate someone because of the skin. That's not a deep enough issue. So yes, we have history, we have the systemic racism, but I'm interested in tapping to the mind of the people that are racist to see where is it that they truly need healing so it can stop manifesting as anger and hatred towards my people. So whatever I can do to support, I am ready, willing, and able. And I just look forward to being connected to people like you all in the community that get it and want to be part of the solution and not feeding into the problem. So God bless you all. And I'm just happy to be in this battle with you.
It's awesome. April, thank you so much for your service and your husband's service and, what you're doing it's still in service. So you're doing mental health issues. That's not an easy gig. It's just not. No matter what, everyone's mental issues are real, and especially to them. So
April, I just have to say, welcome to the community. Thank you for your service. Thank you and your family for your service, because we know that it's not just the service member who serves, but it's the entire family who does. And thank you for just your voice and for lifting all of that up. I feel like in a minute, you had us all like, amen and amen and amen. And so thank you for sharing. We appreciate you.
Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, April. All right. So next I have on the list, Constance. Did she leave? Or is it? No?
Yeah, my name is Constance Carter. Hello, everybody.
Okay.
And I live in Land O'Lakes, and I have been here since 2016. I do.
You're my neighbor, by the way.
Am I? Oh, hello. You see me out and about?
Yeah, you go walking with
Gigi.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hello. So, I have had some opportunities to grow this year. I found out I had stage 3C ovarian cancer in first week of April, and I am very thankful. I'm getting better and better every day, and we'll make it through this. I moved here in.
You look great when you're out there walking. You look awesome. Like you definitely look great. So congratulations. Keep winning, fighting the good fight.
Thank you. I get up and I dress up and I get out there and I go after the day. So I moved here in 2016, also from the Maryland area, and I opened up a small business here surrounding my passion. Which I decided to do later on in life. Something completely different than where my degrees took me. But I opened up a dog grooming salon here in Wesley Chapel called Gorgeous Growlers Grooming, where next to Cypress Creek Animal Hospital on Wesley Chapel Boulevard. Anyway, I would like to talk a little bit about economic racism. And as a business owner, I have faced some economic racism in very subtle ways. Just a few examples, because I actually want to talk about more of the positive things that have happened for me, for my business, the people who come into my business, the people I allow to stay who come into my business. I've had the local influencer for kind of the dog category when I moved in, starting to really push to white-owned salons that kind of flank me. And I gave that some energy for, but as much time as I would have taken to give that energy, then I'm not putting that energy into my business. I've had some issues with accountants who really listen, and I feel invested, and I feel that they're vested in my small business. That's been rectified. But those are, and one more thing. I've had some people come in, just few of them, who have then gone on or had their friends go on to my Google site and put in reviews like, just reviews that it's not my salon. My salon is kennel-free by appointment. We use natural products. The dogs come in and either they go to the toy chest or get up on the couch and smile. Okay, we like our dogs to come out smiling, looking good. My groomers are top-notch. But these reviews were like, it's rat infested and has fleas and blah, 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 to the point where I didn't even ask this. My other clients kind of went on and said, don't know who this person is, but they have never been in Gorgeous Growlers Grooming. So the economic impact is there, but as a business owner for me, I cannot take energy from what's working to put towards energy that's not working, because that has an effect on me, but honestly, they need to work that out. That's a heart issue. That's a spirit issue. So the way I kind of attack this is with every person who comes into our door, they feel respected. They feel like we are happy to have them there. They know their dogs are safe. They know their dogs are happy. We have clients who come from Ocala, South Tampa, definitely New Tampa. Not because we're all so special, but we respect our clients. We respect their dogs. Their dogs run to our door and then run out of the parents' hands to get in. So for me as a Black business owner, it's about putting that energy towards my vessel that can respect everybody that comes into our purview.
That's awesome.
And it works.
That's awesome, Constance.
My client base, they're Indian, Asian, Black, white, police detectives, retired sheriffs. It doesn't matter. Just come in and respect the business, respect the dogs, respect my employees. And so that's how I try to do my part, is to respect everybody that comes within my business. I also am active in the community. As soon as I got here, I joined a women's networking group. We do fundraisers every year and all of that. And so that's how I got further into the community and met people. So I just want to say that Representative Driscoll, thank you for setting this up. Thank you for giving us a platform to share our stories. Any takeaway from this is, unless someone has their knee on your neck, yes, economic impact is real, but I just truly believe that if you're not in a business setting, if you're not taking that energy away from what you can do to service the community, everybody in the community, then you should. So that's how I love my community, how my community has loved me since I've been here. And yes, I know there's racism. I've been through plenty of racism, but that really is affecting them as a person, because how poor are you that you have put yourself in a box? And if that's what you want to do, so be it. So,
all right, Constance, thank you so much. Appreciate you. We'll see you out there walking.
I just wanted to lift up a few resources. It's been great communicating with some of you in the chat, but in terms of the hard work that it takes to do the work to be educated on these issues, I wanted to raise up a few resources, and if you have ideas, please put them in the chat so others can see. Here's one by Ijeoma Oluwa, literally, So You Want to Talk About Race.
It's awesome.
It's a great book. It's a great starter. It talks and defines a lot of the terms that we've been talking about tonight, if you want to get more familiar with them in terms of implicit bias, structural racism, institutional racism. Highly recommend this book. One of my favorite authors right now is Ibram Kendi. Ibram Kendi has written this book, Stamped from the Beginning, but he's also written a very powerful one called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And it really confronts the notion of racism in and of itself as a bad word. Racism really is more of a descriptive word. The true question is whether or not policies and laws that are put in place are promoting systems of oppression, and how we need to get to the point where we're not race neutral, where we truly are anti-racist, and trying to tear some of that down.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Another book. Yeah, I'm not done.
Sorry, my bad.
I could keep going for a really long time, but this is the last one that I wanted to share. It's called Devil in the Grove. This one is by Gilbert King. It tells the story of the Groveland Four boys in Groveland, which is in Lake County, which is just north of Polk County, where I grew up. I grew up off of State Road 33, and literally if you take that about 50 miles north, you'll hit Groveland, Florida. And it's a civil rights tale of terror that was visited upon these innocent boys by law enforcement, by the sheriff, who was, frankly, by all accounts, a racist and a murderous thug. And it just provides some historical context. It's a local story and provides some historical context in terms of some of the tragedies that happened in Florida then.
Was Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall involved in that story? Because he's on there.
Yes, Thurgood Marshall, yes.
That's awesome.
As a lawyer who came down and helped. So yeah, so please use the chat, share any resources that you think are helpful, but those are a few that I wanted to lift up while we have some time.
That's awesome. All right, Karina, you've been patient as well. You're up. Unmute yourself.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'm not sure what's the question because I just came home from work and I wasn't able to log in. So generally, it's just a general thing why we're here. Thank you so much for putting this together. When I read your article, I was like, wow, this is great. I want to be part of the solution. Not that I think I should, because I embrace everybody, but it's always good to know and understand people in general. I've been living in the Wesley Chapel area for the last 4 years. I'm a New Yorker. And when I moved to Florida, I was very shocked. It was a culture shock to me. And I'm still going through that process because in New York, like I had friends from all over the world. And to me, there was no like, who's what. It was just like, who is my friend or, hanging out. So I thought, why don't I live in this community. I want to find out what people are saying, what are they doing, what's going on. I have a young child who, needs medical needs. So I'm kind of close by at home often. But, I thought this is a good platform. And since I was young, I've always wanted to learn about different cultures, and I traveled all over the world. And I remember when I was in college reading that very, very tough book about apartheid and just trying to learn about people and culture. I recently read the book of the Nickel Boys that is based on that private school up in Florida up north. And I thought it was very interesting because I didn't even know that was still going on. And in 2014, there's still investigation going on. So, I'm always trying to learn. And that's basically why I came to this platform. I recently also, I am Hispanic. You know, a lot of people think I'm African American, and that's okay. But the people who, you know, see me Hispanic will say things about, you know, that is not appropriate about African Americans and vice versa. And I'm like, well, I am Hispanic, even though I was raised here in the United States since I was really young. But I'm married with an Anglo husband I have, and now I have a child that, you know, is bilingual because he speaks Spanish. So I want him to learn what I learned when I was growing up. And basically, I remember my mother always saying, you're not important, but no one is more important than you. So I've always had that in my mind. I'm not important because you have to kind of like, you know, be here. Don't think you're up here, but no one is more important than you. You know, so that's what I kind of always remember my mom saying. And my son has always, with all this that's happening, we've talked about it, and he's very pro like being balanced with people, and he's always defending people, and he doesn't see
He's
any
pro anti-racist.
Yeah, he doesn't see the difference. So my husband, who's 60 years old and was raised in Staten Island, I recently asked him, like, hey, did you ever have a conversation about racism when you were growing up? He's like, no, not really. I don't remember my parents saying that, but they're very like Irish, you know, raised and, you know, in a bubble kind of. And I'm like, what? Oh, no. We have to have discussions. So we've kind of had discussions. He's not against anybody, but I believe that you need to understand, even if you're not in that area or in that state, or you're not whatever. I mean, my husband, he accepts everyone, but still you need to understand where people come from and why certain things happen. I recently showed him a video of Emmanuel Acho, I believe is his last name. He's a football player. He has some videos on YouTube, which I will recommend to everybody. It is a great, you know, a couple of videos he has out there. So, you know, we started the conversation. So I thought that was pretty good.
All right. Well, thank you, Karina. All right. So Tim, you're up.
So I'm a problem solver. I live here in the New Tampa area. I like gravitating toward large.
That's better. When you got closer to the computer or the mic, that actually worked. That actually helped. So closer up was better. Go ahead.
Is that better?
Yeah, like it was when you were like looking a little lower down at it. Try it. Let's hear you.
So how about the quality there? Is that better?
No. Keep going. Problem solver. Continue.
Yeah. So I can't fix this one. So, you know, when you break this problem down, there's two parts to it. There's the racism, which is out there. And there's, you know, I'm not sure if we'll ever eliminate it. All you can do is address it, stay on the fight, keep calling it out like you did, Gary. And that's all you can do, because you're not going to change some people. Some people are beyond repair. You can't fix them, and we just have to get on with it. But let's talk about the more immediate problem. And that's how to keep young men, young black men, off the slab in the morgue, okay? So my question is, why in the world aren't the community leaders in the African-American community, the clergy, the press, I understand why the press doesn't do it, but the politicians, why are they failing the young African-American men by not pointing out to them that we don't have a right to resist arrest? None of us have a right to resist arrest. There appears to be this ongoing philosophy out there that we have a right to resist arrest. And, you know, not foregoing the last three instances, Mr. Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, almost every one of these other instances has started and escalated from an instance of resisting arrest. Why not just comply with the officer's instructions, and the perceived injustices can be addressed later on. Again, this is just a utilitarian point of view to keep young black men off the slab in the morgue's office. Why not just be compliant just for the moment? And if you tell me, hey, they can't be compliant just for the moment, I'm going to ask you to give me one example where resisting arrest actually worked out better for the subject of the arrest than going along with it. Now, and the next argument will be, well, Tim, that doesn't give the license to the police to overreact when they resist arrest. They don't have that license to overreact. And I'd say you're right. But I bet if you ask the subject's mom, who's now got a vacant spot at her dining room table, she would tell you that point is probably moot. It doesn't matter. You know, are we going to prove instances of using excessive force with the lives of our Americans? Or are we going to, you know, say, hey, just comply with it for the moment, deal with it for the moment, and it'll pass, and you'll get an opportunity in the courts. All right, you know, that's the near-term problem. The long-term problem, like I said, racism. We have to just call it out, call it for what it is, and correct people and let them know whenever you're not, whenever it's inappropriate, when the conversations are inappropriate, or when the jokes are inappropriate. But in the near term, for keeping young black men off the slab of the morgue's office, how about let's not resist arrest anymore, and let's get that word out by our politicians, our clergy, our community leaders. And, you know, we can ask the press to do it, but they won't do it because that doesn't sell newspapers. That doesn't lead an evening news story. Doesn't make it interesting.
You're calling me out. I'm a member of that press, so that's why I'm here. I'm trying to be on the side of getting people talking. So I take a little bit of offense to you saying that the press, it doesn't sell newspapers. To me, it's not important what sells newspapers. It's what's important that serves my community. So
Gary, you're not the you're not the usual press guy. You have identification with our community, and so present company exempted from my generalized statements there. But you won't hear anybody on the news talk about that. You won't hear folks on NPR talk about, you know, every one of these instances, notwithstanding these last three. It works out for the worst every time. Just be compliant, subdue yourself, you know, just go along with it, and you'll get your opportunity to voice your perceptions of injustice later on. It's not going to be fixed at the point of arrest. I don't know of a single instance where resisting arrest has resulted in a resolution of perceived injustice there at the point of arrest.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Tim. All right. So our last speaker is going to be Priscilla Conyers.
Could I chime in that though, Gary? I feel like
yeah, please, of course.
There was so much in there, and thank you for sharing, Tim. And I just wanted to lift up, you know, that part of, I guess the first part of what you were saying, which is like the racism, to be able to call it out and to address that as we see it. And so part of the problem, it's a very real problem where you have Black men who don't even resist arrest, who aren't even doing anything criminal, and they get stopped and they get treated in such a way that they don't even have the opportunity to get to the point of trying to challenge the incident that happened in court because their life is cut short. And that, you know, being held on the ground, whether you take Eric Garner, who was held in a chokehold in New York, even though chokeholds were illegal, and he's saying, I can't breathe. You know, he's not resisting. He's trying to say, on a basic human level, we require oxygen in our lungs in order to survive, and I can't get that. And then he's still treated that way. Or where you have Philando Castile, who was stopped in his car, unarmed, with his family there, hands on 10 and 2 like he's supposed to be, and he's still treated a certain way. You know, I think about an incident where I was pulled over by law enforcement, where I was on a highway and I'm just trying to get to a good stopping place, and having officers approach me, guns drawn, and what was I doing wrong but just trying to pull over. So you know, representing a young Black man who's a college student who was walking his girlfriend home, and they're stopped in downtown Orlando, and the officer gets aggressive with him and is charged with resisting arrest. By all accounts, this kid had no priors, there was no even reason for the officer to have approached them. So on the one hand, I can hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, I'd be remiss if I didn't lift up that there are situations where Black men are doing absolutely nothing wrong, and yet and still they encounter this sort of violence from law enforcement. And so there's a concept called implicit bias, and maybe you're familiar with it. I don't mean to be redundant, but if for those on the call who may not be familiar with it, implicit bias science shows that we actually register a person's race before anything else, before we register their height, their gender, anything else about them, their size, we register their race. And so there are studies that show, for example, that teachers in a classroom, particularly white teachers, will look at the Black and brown kids more frequently, and those kids tend to get more in trouble. And why is that? It's because they're implicit biases. Doesn't always necessarily mean that they are racist or what we traditionally think of as racist, but there are these implicit biases that we all have on a subconscious level that play out in our everyday lives. So part of I would even contend that being a Black person in America, and particularly for our young Black boys, families do have conversations with them about what you do when you're stopped by law enforcement. But the unfortunate fact of being Black in America is sometimes that's still not enough.
I just want to make sure we're clear. You're not endorsing resisting arrest, are you? Because none of those cases would serve as a plausible reason to resist arrest. I said up front that racism is here. It's in America, and all we can do is fight it every day. Okay, but I don't think that any of those cases, if we're interested in keeping young men off the slab in the morgue, none of those cases present a reason for the resisting arrest. None of those instances that you just called.
Tim, we have to move on.
Okay. All right. We don't want to have the conversation. Okay, I got it. But, otherwise we're just talking, fluffy language, and we're not really wanting to get after and address the issue here that can have immediate impacts on vacant spots at Black mothers' tables at Thanksgiving and Christmas. If that's what everyone wants to do, then okay.
Believe me, everybody here, I believe, is invested in that. And the reason why we're here is we want to talk about solutions. The purpose of tonight's call, however, is for people to share their experiences. And I know we're short on time, so we do want to make sure that the last guest has an opportunity to speak. But thank you for speaking up, because I do believe that this would lead to worthwhile conversation in future meetings.
Thank you, Fentress. All right, Priscilla, you're up.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I do apologize for my tardiness. I recently was able to get logged on, and I am having some technical difficulties, so my apologies. However, I just would like to express the sentiment of everyone else that I was able to hear, in the fact that it definitely is a problem, not only in our community, but just in our country, unfortunately. And I just would like to let everyone know that, just to please have an open mind, for all races, and that.
Well, Priscilla, we can't see you. So what's your background?
I am a Black woman. I live in the New Tampa, Wesley Chapel area. My husband is Black as well, African American. We have 2 Black daughters, and we're professionals. When you look at me or you look at my husband, you may just, I don't know what people may see of a different race, but I'm a clinical pharmacist. I work at a well-known, prominent hospital, graduated from pharmacy school. I have my doctorate degree. I graduated from college, summa cum laude. Very educated. My husband actually is right here. John, I'm sorry you can't see us, but he is with Hillsborough County Fire Rescue. And we're just 2 young Black families, here in the area, just trying to make a name for ourselves, trying to make a way for our family to provide, and, just enjoy the city, enjoy the country that we call home. And, we're just grateful to be here. And I would like to thank you, Gary, for extending the offer, this invitation, for allowing us to be able to have a voice and express our feelings and our thoughts in this forum. We definitely need more of these types of conversations.
I agree.
And my husband, John, is here. I'm sorry you can't see us, but he has a few words as well.
Let's hear it, John.
Yeah, like my wife said, we got here a little bit late. Sorry, we have two younger daughters. We had to put them down. So
That's
that
right. We
was
had
our
other people
technical.
that had to talk too, so it worked out for you guys. I wanted
Yeah,
to make sure I
so
got everyone in.
yeah, but my biggest thing is just us as people just realizing that we got these law enforcement that's here. It's just a very unfortunate thing that we're going to always have. We're going to always have bad ones. It's like in every profession that you're ever going to be in. Unfortunately, there's a chance that you're going to have some bad ones out there, and it's a very bad thing because we have friends that's in law enforcement. They're good guys and girls, and unfortunately, these bad ones are creating a very bad route for our law enforcement. I think the biggest thing that we need to do is just start to try to take more time to evaluate the personnel that we're putting out on the streets as far as law enforcement, having them go through a little bit more training that maybe we could see a little bit more. But I know from working in my profession, the demand is so high that they're rushing to get staffing out there. And I think that's the biggest thing. Unfortunately, you're rushing staff to get out there. You can't really get a great product because you're rushing everything. And I feel like that's what's going on really right now with the world, is that unfortunately we can't take the proper time to get a great product on the street because you got to rush because we're so low on them and we need so much law enforcement out there until we're running into ill-advised decisions that's being made from time to time from our law enforcement.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. Fentress, why don't you wrap it up for us? And John, wait, before you do, John West, I'm going to send everybody the link to that video because I really think there's so much. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful message, and I think it's the right message at this time. So I just wanted to, thank you for that.
Thanks, Gary.
And I'm sorry we didn't get to show it tonight. Fentress, take us home.
My pleasure, Gary. And Gary, thank you so much for having a heart for the community and for providing this type of forum and outlet. I think the work that was done here tonight actually was really important, even though we didn't have time to get to the solutions. Part of having conversations that can be open and honest, I think it starts with understanding where we're all coming from and building out that sort of a safe space. And many of you shared details that are very personal to your experiences, or you shared thoughts and your perspectives and ideas. And that's not easy, especially in American society where we've been taught to not talk about race because it's treated as taboo. I really enjoyed getting to know so many of you tonight. Thank you for giving of your time. And remember, I know that there's so much going on in the world, and we've got a global pandemic, and we're dealing with institutional racism, and you got hurricanes back to back that are starting to pile up. It's like, what more can 2020 offer us? What more gifts are to come? But I want you to feel encouraged. There's a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that I absolutely love, and I butcher it every time, but it's basically to the effect that dark can't cast out light, only light can do that. And so keep being the light that we need in the world. Keep being the light that we need in the community, because I think that we are going through a time of enlightenment in America. So what an interesting time to live in and to be a part of the conversation and the actual work that leads to more light in the world. So thank you for being here tonight. Everybody stay safe and COVID conscious, and we'll look forward to the next one.
All right. Well, thank you, Fentress, and thank you everyone for being here. I also want to thank my videographers, Charmaine George and Richard Nasrallah here for sticking it out with us and making sure that we were recording all of this. There will be an article in the next New Tampa Neighborhood News on September 15th, and then it'll run again or be updated, hopefully, with a new date for the next meeting on September 29th in Wesley Chapel. So both sides will get to see it. And I didn't know what I was looking for, but I know I found something tonight. So hopefully we're starting something and not just having this meeting. And by the way, all the little suggestions on the sides, Charmaine tells me, will be recorded as well, because I'm not writing these down. But amazing all the resources that everyone's pointing out here. I got to at least check out some of these. So thank you all. Fentress, thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Gary.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Fentress, good night.